We're closing out Week 9 with a Southwest showdown between the Arizona Cardinals and the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys have won 7 of the last 8 matchups, with the Cards' last win coming back in 2017. That said, Arizona did win their only playoff matchup, so things haven't been completely one-sided. We'll figure out who emerges victorious in the simulation, but first, let's get behind the bar and make our drink a Southwest Sunrise. All right, our final game of Week 9. Crazy to think that we're halfway through the season already, but man, time sure does fly when you're tipsy. This is also the last primetime game for Arizona, so sorry Cards, hate to see you go. Shame that this season doesn't seem to be breaking your way. But as a small parting gift, we're going to start with Arizona's representative first, the Tequila Sunrise. Now some of you might be going, wait, the Tequila Sunrise is from California. And others of you might be looking at that picture and going, that doesn't look like any Tequila Sunrise I've ever seen. And that's because the Tequila Sunrise that we're using for Arizona is the original Tequila Sunrise, not the 1970s version. See, this Tequila Sunrise, the one that you're likely familiar with the orange juice and the grenadine, that one was created in Sausalito, California in the 1970s, aka the dark age of cocktails. And it really is pretty much everything you'd expect of a drink from that era, super sweet, super easy to drink, and profoundly mid. The OG Tequila Sunrise is a post-prohibition drink from Gene Sewlett at the Arizona Biltmore in the 1930s. This is still a tequila-based long drink, but instead of grenadine for the color, it uses creme de cassis, aka black currant liquor. It then accents those flavors with a bit of lime juice, which is a classic in, tequila-based drinks, and then lengthens it all out with club soda, which adds some more body and, mouthfeel to this drink without messing with any of those core flavors. So now that we've met Arizona's representative, let's head over to Dallas and meet Alice. The Cowboys cocktail is none other than Alice from Dallas. Now this drink is most commonly served as a shot, but I have found versions that turn it into an equal parts cocktail. The 3 main ingredients in this drink are tequila, coffee liqueur, and triple sec, which creates a really interesting kind of flavor trifecta of that agave, coffee, and orange. Honestly, not a whole lot more for me to say on this one. I tried to find anything about the origin of this drink and who the hell Alice is, but I just couldn't come up with anything, Alice from Dallas is a pretty common phrase. There was a World War II bomber named that, a couple of songs, a children's book, but I couldn't find any connection between those and this drink. So if you have any ideas on where the name may have come from or who first created this drink, please let me know down in the comments. Now, obviously, this is going to be a tequila drink, as this is a Southwest showdown, and both of our inspirations are tequila-based drinks. But I had a lot of flexibility in, what to surround the tequila with. Ultimately, I decided to drop the coffee liqueur and the club soda, leaving us with hopefully a sort of lighter, fruitier cocktail that could be served up in a coupe. So the final spec is going to be 1.5 ounces of our tequila. I decided to go with a reposado here because the Alice from Dallas recipe calls for a reposado, but you could probably get away with a Blanco. More just kind of, slightly changed the flavor profile of this drink. This is also a fresh bottle, so I haven't had a chance to actually try this one out, but the dude at the liquor store said it was a good pick, so we shall see. 3/4 ounce of our creme de cassis, aka black currant liquor, as I stated. Oh, it's got an interesting scent to it. Huh. Yeah, I don't think I've actually had black currants in anything. That's kind of interesting. It's almost like a cross between blueberries and blackberries. 3/4 ounce of our triple sec. I think technically this should be more of a Grand Marnier, a cognac base orange liqueur, but I think the Cointreau will do just fine in it. Still a very nice orange liqueur. And then finally, 1/2 ounce of lime juice. Put a little bit of acid in there. I need to get some more lime juice as well. I'm running low. Whoop. Hell yeah. All right, I'm gonna shake that up. All right. We're gonna strain that into our coupe glass. Ooh. Actually, it's funny. That looks like identical to the Pacific Pollinator that we did. All right, so this is our Southwest Sunrise. Let's give it a taste. Kind of looks like the Dawn, you know, if you sort of squint at it. Huh. Oh, wow, okay. Oh. Ooh. Okay, the Reposado I think is absolutely the right choice, actually. I lightly rescind my earlier statement about being able to use a Blanco in this. I think you want the character that a Reposado is going to bring. Yeah, so right up front, it's all of the sweetness sort of initially, right? So you get a very interesting kind of flavor combo of that black currant, that orange, and the lime. Those three kind of come in right away, and they do a very interesting kind of like blend. I can't like pinpoint what it tastes like. It's a very, it's a unique combination of flavors, and it plays really well together. It's not the most sort of interesting or dynamic combination. They do kind of like flatten each other a little bit. They're not like super contrasting. They're not doing anything like particularly interesting. But it's definitely unique. It's not something you've probably tasted before, that specific combination. And then on the back end, you get all of the really nice sort of, you know, agave, like roasted agave notes from that Reposado. Let's see. This is interesting. And the nose is very interesting. I think it's coming from the black currant. I think the creme de cassis is what gives this drink such a distinct nose and sort of initial note. It'll be interesting. I might have to try a little bit of that liqueur just like on its own to get a sense of what the baseline for that tastes like. Yeah, it's not, wow, that's okay. It's a cool combination of flavors. It really is. Like that, the triple sec honestly comes through maybe a little bit less than I was initially expecting. You know, like Cointreau is a pretty strong flavor, but it doesn't, you know, nothing is really dominating this drink. I think this is a very well-balanced drink, both in terms of like overall sweetness level. You know, it doesn't read as too cloying, but it's certainly not too dry. You know, we've got lots of sugar in here. And it's also like not too, like there's no one flavor note that's really like dominating this drink. They all are kind of like pretty well balanced and creating some really interesting sort of blends in the mouth. And this, I'm looking forward to having just this tequila neat because I think this is probably a really good Reposado because it is lending a lot of those sort of like aged, almost like, not char quite. That would be more like a mezcal, would be like that really sort of smoky flavor. But it's those sort of like aged, rich agave notes that form a really interesting tail to this drink. You know, up front, it's all of the liqueurs. You know, it's the black currant, it's the orange, bit of the lime. The lime really gives it like a touch of sharpness that I think it needs. I don't think it would have that kind of bite otherwise. It's certainly boozy as well. It's very sort of booze forward, which makes sense. You know, there's only half an ounce of lime juice. That's the only non-alcoholic ingredient in this drink. So relatively strong, but not like harsh, you know, like it still goes down very smooth because I think it is just a really well-balanced drink. Yeah, that's a cool little combination of flavors, honestly. I think you could definitely, you know, I don't think it's like gonna blow any sort of like anybody's minds. I don't think I've done anything, you know, particularly revolutionary here, but it's a good drink. It's, you know, very nice to sip on. It's got a lot of character to it. It's certainly, you know, it doesn't feel like your sort of average run-of-the-mill type drink. It feels quite unique. What's a good way of putting it? It's unique in content, but not unique in like theory, I guess, if that makes any sense. Like,
I haven't done anything revolutionary. You know, it's like a story with like a rather straightforward like plot that you've kind of seen. You know, it's hitting the beats that you sort of expect from a story, but the characters feel, you know, unique, and they seem to be sort of interacting in ways that you don't usually see. Yeah, it's a rather straightforward drink, but with new ideas, sort of, or, you know, it's not like breaking the mold, it's not reinventing the wheel, but it feels fresh. It feels cool and interesting. All right, well, I'm gonna go and finish this drink, and then we're gonna finish out week 9 in the simulation.
The visiting Cardinals start with the ball in this game, and while the Cards' offense has had some issues this season, so has Dallas's defense, which allows Arizona to make it all the way to the 6-yard line on their opening drive before giving up a pass TD to Greg Dortch. Facing a 3rd and 7 from the 25, the Cowboys show off why they traded for Pickens, as Dak scrambles and heaves it up to Pickens in the back of the end zone, who hauls it in to tie the game up. After that, these offenses stall out for a couple of drives, as Pickens drops a wide open pass over the middle, leading the Cowboys to trot out Aubrey to kick the 45-yarder, which I'm pretty sure he can make in his sleep. The Cards strike right back though, taking less than 2 minutes to make it down to the 6-yard line again, where Kyler scrambles on in, putting them up 14-10 at the half. The Cowboys start off the second half with a nearly 5-minute drive, capped off by Javonte Williams dodging defenders and hurdling his linemen for a 4-yard rushing TD. Arizona seems to be a revenge-motivated team though, as on the following drive they draw up some play action to Elijah Higgins, who takes this 65 yards down the field and barely catches the pylon for the huge touchdown to retake the lead. Cowboys around midfield in the fourth quarter, and Dak Prescott has enough time in the pocket to enjoy a nice meal. So long, in fact, that the AI just kind of breaks as he throws the ball right to a Cardinals defender, gifting them possession. The Cards make it to the Cowboys' 31-yard line, but Kyler's scrambling toss to Trey McBride falls out of bounds, causing them to kick the 48-yarder to extend their lead to a clean 7 points. However, that's still within striking distance for this Dallas offense, as Dak fires a dart to Pickens, who picks up a block and scoots in for the 26-yard TD, tying this game up with just over 2 minutes left. Cardinals make it all the way to the 9-yard line, forcing the Cowboys to burn all their timeouts. However, instead of just running out the rest of the clock and kicking the game-winning chip shot, Kyler pads his stats with another rushing touchdown, giving the Cowboys the ball with just over a minute left. With 10 seconds left and the ball on the 19-yard line, Dak rolls out of the pocket and takes off. And it looks like he's going to make it and tie the game up, but somehow Madden rules him down at the 1-yard line, and the Cardinals escape with a 31-24 victory. Ah, get fucked, Cowboys! How does it feel to get screwed by the refs?
That's how it feels!
Sorry, still processing that Lions Dan Skipper trauma. We're gonna fucking destroy y'all in week 14. Anyways, close game. I could see a fully rested Cardinals team coming off their bye week getting the win here, but I certainly wouldn't be surprised if Dallas wins instead. Now, this sim does assume that Kyler is healthy and starting in this matchup, neither of which are certain. I don't think this team is significantly better or worse with Brissett instead of Murray, but it would definitely have an effect on how this offense operates. Kyler didn't exactly light up the stat sheet through the air in this one, but 2 touchdowns and no interceptions is a winning recipe. Dak did much more, putting up nearly 300 passing yards and matching Murray's 2 touchdowns, but he did have that inexplicable interception in the fourth quarter. Now, this game featured the most rushers of any game in the series so far, with 9 different players logging at least 1 carry. Amari DeMarcado led all of them in attempts and yards, though he's not certain to play in this game either. If he's still sidelined with that ankle injury, it'll likely be Bam Knight who sees the most carries, as opposed to the single carry for -2 yards he had in this game. The Cardinals have a very mid-run defense, but they completely shut down Javonte Williams in this game, as he only totaled 16 yards on 11 carries, though he did still manage to find the end zone once. Here we see the biggest difference switching to Jacoby at QB would make, as Kyler turned 6 scrambles into 70 yards and 2 TDs, which would be his best game of the season, and a feat that Brissett is unlikely to match. Dak also had one of the best rushing games of his career, with 5 carries for 53 yards. In a refreshing return to normalcy, the Cowboys' big 3 are leading the receiving stats, as Ferguson has the most catches, Pickens leads in yardage, and CD is sandwiched right between them. Pickens was the only one of those three to find the end zone though, accounting for both of Dak's passing TDs. The Cardinals spread the ball around a lot as well, with none of their pass catchers bringing in more than 3 receptions. Funnily enough, Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride didn't catch either of Kyler's passing TDs, with those instead going to Greg Dortch and Elijah Higgins. What makes it even better is that those touchdown grabs were their only catches of the game, real masters of efficiency, those two. Over in the Monte Carlo sim, Dak has roughly 100 yards knocked off his passing total, while Kyler remains as the Cardinals' starting QB. I did, however, keep DeMarcado sidelined, instead giving Bam Knight the starting role, and the sim actually predicts a big game from him. It also sees a pretty even split between Javonte and Jaden in the Cowboys' backfield, with both of them having 40 to 50 yards. Also, it still has Greg Dortch and Elijah Higgins notching a single catch, though it gives them a collective 17% chance at scoring a single touchdown. Once again, we see a pretty normal distribution of results, though this one is far more concentrated in the most likely outcome of a 21-14 Cardinals victory. As a result, it shouldn't be surprising that the final score after averaging all 10,000 games tilts towards Arizona with a 19-17 final score. And as this is the final game of the week, let's have a look through the overall standings halfway through the season. The AFC North continues to be mostly upside down, and I think the most surprising part isn't that the Sims predicted the Ravens and Bengals would be above 500, but just how much the simulations hate the Steelers. I don't think any of us expected them to be leading the division before the season started, but 1-7 and below the Browns is honestly inexplicable. I think a lot of that is driven by the fact that their offense in Madden just can't score any points, that they have the lowest points for of any team in the sim. AFC East is also upside down, though this one makes a lot more sense through a sim lens. Madden loves fast players and scrambling QBs, aka the Dolphins and the Jets. It didn't foresee Drake May's breakout, and it just hates everything about the Bills. Now the AFC South and West look mostly reasonable, with just a few notable discrepancies. In the West, the sim is higher on the Chiefs and Raiders than it should be, but those were understandable assumptions, and this is a very close division in reality and in the sim. And we also have the opposite situation in the South, where it does correctly have the Colts on top, but by too small of a margin, and it also overemphasized the Texans' struggles. Over in the NFC, the Packers picked up their first loss of the simulation this week, leaving the Eagles as the only undefeated team in the simulation. Now, the ordering of the North and East here are pretty much correct, but the gap in the standings has been significantly exaggerated. The West is also actually looking pretty good, as it's correctly predicted the three-way race for the top of that division just got the participants mixed up. Instead of the Rams falling off, it's the Cardinals who are languishing at the bottom with a 2-5 record as of this writing. Finally, the sim is just too high on the NFC South overall, and I don't know exactly where this is coming from. The Bucks and Panthers are actually both pretty spot on, but the Falcons and Saints have been gifted basically 6 more collective wins than they should have. Do you agree with the simulations, or do you envision a different future? I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts down in the comments. As a reminder, our drink for this matchup is the well-balanced, sweet and strong Southwest Sunrise. If you make it, please let me know what you think, and I'd love to hear your suggestions for what drink should be your team's representative. Stay curious, stay thirsty, and I'll see you in the next one.